Robin Hoffman. I'm a public artist here in Charlottesville, and some people might ask, what's a public artist? Well, a public artist is somebody who, in 2021, might have done 61 episodes of A Day, a Minute with Artist Robin Hoffman TV show here in Charlottesville Community Media Center. And this year, of course, is the COVID contamination, worrying situation, but I got COVID tested. So I'm taking off my mask right now, so I'm safe to be able to talk and engage with my guests, hopefully. So, but people want to know what a public artist is doing in the time of COVID. And I want to tell you, it's just as scary as everybody's situation, but even more intensely because we as artists observe everything. And then we're like, oh my gosh, this is horrible, we feel bad and all that. But then we want to, you know, finally be able to do something about it. And then we are professionals, so we actually create things all the time. And as a public artist, I work in different mediums. So I might draw, or I might do videos, or I might do sculptures, or I might do murals or logos or whatever. That's just me. Not every public artist does everything. And that's a good thing because, you know, to get really professional and to get paid for what you do is, anyway. So, but today I do have concerns about the idea of science and art. And oh, hi, Robin, how are you? It's good to see you. Yeah, I'm Robin Hoffman. I'm a registered nurse here in Charlottesville, and I am right now doing flu vaccinations with CVS, and we are doing the Pfizer flu vaccines. And it's good to see you. And I hope that you, as an artist, can help us, which you usually do, actually. People are unaware that science, technology, engineering, art, and math is something that has helped forever the modernization of everything. And I can tell you that because I've been a nurse for 40 years. As a nurse, you can see how the evolution of things have happened. The evolution of equipment, the evolution of diagnostic equipment, and also the cellular level of everything is now you can see DNA, you can see RNA, you can map the brain and the neurological system and the respiratory system. It's amazing since 40 years ago when I started. I started with actual tools on my belt because we had to like unscrew things. Now we have hydraulic lifts and we have computerized drips. And, you know, so everything doesn't have to be tweaked and this and that while we're working. We can just seamlessly go in there. And usually now you'll see us with a computer a lot when it comes to being in the hospital. But what I want to say is that science and art are very dependent on each other. Yeah, absolutely. I think that that is so important, you know, that people don't realize when you started out as a kid in school, you know, you had your arts and crafts, you had your teacher helping you build your Legos and your, you know, different things, working in the sandbox, dancing. That is actually helping you with engineering. It's spatial reality, it's all these different things. And then they added the classics, the music, and how, you know, you build math with music, you know, the notes and the timing of things. So art and engineering and math and science have always needed each other. There was some time, I don't know when, that when I was in school, you know, art wasn't important anymore, it seemed, because I went to private school and then I went to public school. And thank goodness for public school because we had I was in Brooklyn, but we had an expansion of the arts there because the humanity, if you were living with 80 million people in a 10-mile square spot, which is like the city of New York, you're going to need or require different relative understanding, have empathy for other people and that sort of thing. So there's theater, and that is an acting out of somebody else's reality. And those things are the things that make you feel loved, feel human, feel comfortable enough to be able to work every day or create every day or be very innovative. There's a whole kinds of systems. And don't you think that that's true, Robin? It's true, Robin. It's that as a science-based person, now being a registered nurse for 40 years, I worked in different capacities. That's, again, unusual. A lot of nurses, they stay in the same specialty. What does that mean? Well, if you have a kidney problem, or if you have a neurological problem like a Parkinson's, or if you have a problem that has to do with a lot of systems in your body. So every nurse works in a different capacity. Some work outpatient, some work on telehealth now. I've done all of that except for basically CCU. I've never been a CCU nurse, but I've worked in research for pharmacology. I've been a research nurse and certified at NYU. So I've been a research in pain management. I've been certified in rehabilitation for acute, like if you had a stroke or spinal cord injury and that sort of thing. And then finally I became a certified school nurse, and I worked in the Patterson district for a very long time in New Jersey. And that was an underserved area for no good reason. I mean, there was lots of resources, but it was a lot of politics too. And so I had to become very resourceful for my kids and for my employees, the teachers, and also the families. And I did a lot of curriculum building and also outreach for the PTO. And then I got involved with everything. I mean, changed the way asthma in New Jersey basically was delivered care. And that was just by an accident, and that's another story. But when I came here to Charlottesville in 2006, I was looking for something new, but I found telemedicine at UVA. And I want to say that I helped write a grant in 2009 and gave it to Tia Campbell, the supervisor for Virginia schools. But we did vaccinations together, H1N1. We did, you take care of the kids in school as well as the adults to keep them safe, to be able to congregate into a classroom and things like that so that they don't get contaminated. And also we look at bloodborne pathogens and that sort of thing. But we have to deliver this kind of care in a human way. You can't expect somebody to just listen to you. People are human, that means they have feelings, and those feelings aren't always obvious, especially if you're nervous about something that happened to you. So we do need art, we do need music. Music therapy is actually a science, and you actually are a therapist, and also art therapy, and that's what I was studying at NYU because I really loved both, and I also saw the necessity of having art to help people relax and to be able to function if something really bad happened to them. Absolutely, Robin. I think that people really don't understand how science has been separated. But in 2011, actually, UVA art department connected with the science, the engineering department. And at that moment, they realized what STEAM, which is the science, technology, engineering, art, and math, necessitated was the artist who would come up with some visual connection for the engineer to actually process, and for the scientist to even think about, like, how can that happen? So all the elements have to come together. I'm not sure why the school systems and, like, after the insurance companies, I think, or whatever, came and they disbanded, like, healthcare. I don't know why all of a sudden we were dependent on not science, not the humanities, but we were dependent on somebody else's idea of what art and drama and therapy had to do with people's outcome for the better. So anyway, I just want to say that this has been a very interesting conversation, because it's not common that we reflect. We don't reflect on, like, things from the past and how did that happen to the present, unless of course we're a philosopher or we're a writer, somebody who would write a memoir or whatever, but we don't really have the time to reflect as people who are working every day, taking care of our families, and becoming, like, part of society. We don't really have time to say, well, how come that happened? Or why do we have this street sign? Or whatever. And so, unfortunately, but fortunately, because in this time of COVID, I think, everybody's taking time to say, oh, yeah. And especially with the political outcome that has happened, I think, too. We were told that all of a sudden we didn't have any choices. We didn't have any democracy for like 4 years. And I mean that the Democratic component is only in the United States. There's very little democracy in the world. I mean, we have probably the most stringent laws based on our Constitution, which is also a religious thing. Now, religious things also have rituals that help us keep ourselves sort of practicing a good, healthy behavior. But also, it can be the other way, just like politics, or just like science, or just like technology, or just like art. It can happen that somebody makes a wrong decision and doesn't tell anybody that it's a wrong decision because they don't want, they have their own pride coming up with the idea or whatever. So right now, I think there's like very little opportunity to not work where you feel like you're gonna fail or not. You can fail or not, but you have to say that you did. And also that it doesn't work because we have the climate issues and everything else. And as an artist, we need these resources. Like you can't just work in a place where there aren't enough resources, such as different kinds of color, different kinds of weather, and so forth, for us, to be able to operate. Yes. I think I know what you're saying. It's interesting because working in the nursing profession, working with people and communities, it's usually when there's a need that people all suddenly have to stop and pause and think, oh my goodness, something just happened to me. Or I need to feel better so that I can proceed and function and go to class, or, go back to my family or whatever. And at that moment, so nursing, we have to be very patient We have to know that there's going to be systems that are not catching up to the functioning of a person and that sort of thing, physical systems, and also environmental systems. So when you talk about climate, well, you know, the nursing have to be very cognizant of like the lighting in people's rooms. If you have too much lighting, it can take out your vitamin D. So now all the schools are changing their lighting to funnel lights, which enable, you know, the sunlight to come in or whatever. And then also natural lighting, and also open up the windows and let the air circulate, and also making sure that the children do not come to school sick. You know, attendance, the federal government has decided that attendance is how they're going to pay the schools, the public schools. And so, you know, now that we have the Zoom, now that we have education, we are redefining how we're going to congregate and how we're going to pass different kinds of contagion, but also, or not, and hopefully find different systems. We need artists and engineers and technology, yeah, absolutely. And then the science is how we proceed. I mean, if you see a germ, such as hepatitis, that sits on some surface for 7 days, you're going to want to find a way to immunize people so that, for instance, in some countries like Korea, everybody has hepatitis. And so, you know, they absolutely could have at some point, if they knew how they all got it or transmitted it, they could have prevented everybody from hepatitis. Hepatitis eventually will eat up your liver. And so, so there are certain types of hepatitis and how you catch it and all that sort of stuff. But like, for instance, when we first incurred AIDS in the 80s, I was a nurse working in Downstate Medical Center, and we didn't even know what it was. It was just like ravaged somebody, you know. But anyway, we finally figured it out, and over time, through science, community, and theater even. I mean, there were Broadway plays that enabled people to remember that people were actually human. And it didn't matter if you had beliefs or you had a sexual interest or whatever. It's that we were all having a heart, a lung, you know, a kidney or whatever, and that, you know, we are all human. And we just have to be reminded of that all the time, because, you know, there's some people that would like to polarize. And we know that in science, we know that in, you know, engineering or whatever, that there will be things that are for one person. But we have to, what do you think about that, Robin? It's true, absolutely, that I've seen. I was actually part of the WPA. I went to Brooklyn College, just my undergrad, and there we had professors, because it was paid for by the state of New York. I actually had most of my education benefited to me. I had to go through the admission process, and I had to have, you know, really good scores and all that sort of stuff. But my teachers were my English teacher was the chief editor of the New York Times. My philosophy teacher was like a philosopher. You know, and they had hired these professionals to come into the Brooklyn College and to the CUNY school system. They paid them really good money, and they only had to come in like twice a week for a couple of hours, and so they lined up, you know. So we were very lucky, and so my education was with real professionals, famous artists, and so I became involved with being a public artist at that time. There was one course that I took that was excellent. We went, actually, this was when I went to NYU after Brooklyn College for my grad school. At NYU, the artists took us to their lofts, And that's when I realized the profession and what it entailed being an artist. That was the whole semester. It was great. And so I met different artists, and I actually became friends with a couple of them. And then I actually worked professionally. I assisted Chuck Close for painting and mixing colors and things like that with him. But anyway, what I want to say is, when I went through the Brooklyn College experience, the WPA was the War Powers Act. And that was made by the FDR so that the arts would bring back the humanity during a wartime, because we were, worried, scared. Somebody was coming to kill us. And so the artists were paid. And that's what we need to do now. We have to bring in the arts and the humanities back in. And COVID we're trying to do that with Zoom and that sort of thing, but it's not easy to reinvent some of your modes of working with mediums, especially if you're a specialist in one thing or another, like in nursing, don't you think? It's absolutely true that working in the context of your community is so beneficial as a nurse. So if you know people at home are living in squalor, and they come to you and they present at the doctor's office or in front of you at the health department or whatever, and you don't understand why they got that way, or you have a preconceived idea that somehow they didn't work hard in life, or they're entitled, or something like that. That's something that's not true. Nobody wants to be out on the street with their hand out for food, for money for food. Nobody does. That's not a profession. That's just a hardship. And so as a nurse or somebody who is a provider, yes, you have to understand the community. You have to understand the logistics of where people live. And so, yeah, you have to keep your eyes open. And a lot of times plays, theater can do that. Some of the most classic stories of why people come from different countries and then they immigrate to come here, like Fiddler on the Roof. That helps providers, that helps people in nursing. So I'm really grateful for you and for us to work together when we need to. Yes. I have been very fortunate in my life to have had a mom who was also a teacher, an educator, as well as a business owner. She owned 2 schools, one in Brooklyn on Avenue N, and Avenue U, and in Brooklyn, and then one in Staten Island. The one in Brooklyn was like a storefront. It was a corner store, and she had actually broken down the wall, and she taught fine arts. And then it's Brooklyn, so you have the Italians, and you have the Hungarians, and you have a whole mixture of people coming into her school to learn how to do painting and study and that sort of thing. And I was her gopher. I was young, and I would do murals for people and paint lampshades and CB radio signs for appliance stores and that sort of thing. People would come into her school and think she was an artist. She didn't have a specialty or whatever, but she did. And she also, in Staten Island, she had a sculpture studio, and she would stand up on the table and pour in her molds and all that sort of stuff. So I learned how to construct things at that time. But then when I went through Brooklyn College, they also teach you how to be engineers and construct things and that sort of thing, but they teach you philosophy. They teach you the sciences, psychology and that sort of thing too. So, community necessitates education, absolutely, but people can do that in their lifetime, in their skill set, but they need STEAM. They need science, and it should be always combined. And I'm really glad that I had this time to talk with you, because I'm very grateful for you, as well as I'm sure you're grateful for me for being in this time of hardship and this time of climate change, and that we need to all come together with every kind of effort and talent that we have. And so I want to thank you again. It's been a pleasure.